Hi, my name is Sheyla Street. I'm a senior at West Point. I'm applied statistics and data science major, and I'll be presenting today on barriers to a robust cyber workforce. And I would like to thank my advisors, Colonel Moore, Colonel Fukuzawa, and Captain Freeney, as well as the Office of the National Cyber Director. And I'm going to go over my motivation for this research objective, methodology, results, conclusion, and then we'll have questions. So for motivation, as I mentioned, Office of National Cyber Director, I had the privilege of interning there last summer. And so I learned a lot about what they were doing. I worked in the Cyber Workforce Education and Training Directorate. And what they were focused on was closing the gap between the workforce and positions, cyber positions specifically. And so they focused on skills-based learning, getting rid of degree requirements, and really just trying to meet the workforce where they are. And a big number that I kept hearing while I was interning there is that there's over 500,000 unfilled cyber positions. And so like this chart is just kind of showing that how that number is just increasing over the year as cyber threats continue to evolve. And something that happened recently was in December of 2024, the U.S. Treasury was breached by Chinese hackers, and they weren't even able to respond. They actually had to call CISA, and so that just shows kind of the motivation of this research of that there's so many unfilled cyber positions. Like we don't even have people in the Treasury who are protecting our systems. So that leads me to my research objective, which is measuring the gap between workforce KSAs and unfilled cyber positions. And a quick pulse check to make sure you guys are paying attention. Miss Tracy, can you define cyber skills in 1 to 3 words? Like, what do you think it is?
I would say someone that's able to defend the network.
Okay, so I'll say someone who is able to defend. Sir, what about you?
In 3 words.
Yeah, in 3 words.
Preserves capabilities.
Okay, so we have someone who defends and preserves capabilities. We'll keep that in mind. Okay. So for this, to measure the gap, we had to have 2 data sets. So the first data set is focused on the knowledge, skills, and abilities of the workforce. And so this was survey data, and if I have time to go over limitations, I'll talk about why we use survey data. But basically, this is just people who have jobs reporting their knowledge, skills, and abilities on a scale of 0 to 7. And they're reporting it regardless of their job. But there was 29 different job titles, and I filtered the data for the specific job code of 15, which is mathematical and computer science jobs. And then to get the other part, to measure the gap, for job requirements, I used data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and looked at employer projections. And so there were 17 different skills that fell under employer projections. And like I used those to say, okay, these are the skills that industry and that jobs are looking for. And then I compared that to the knowledge and skills and abilities. The knowledge, skills, and abilities that were in the other data set. And I also filtered this by the SOC code 15. So to measure this gap, I used the cosine similarity test. And what that is really just 2 vectors. And so the 2 vectors, the first vector was the skill requirements. And so that came from the BLS data. And then the second vector was the workforce KSAs, and that's the survey data. And so using the data sets, I was able to put the data into 2 vectors. And one was measured on like the 0 to 7 scale, and I normalized it so that can be on a 0 to 1 scale because the employer projections were already on a 0 to 1 scale. And really, the cosine similarity test is just the magnitude or the dot product of the 2 vectors over the magnitude as shown. And so what we're trying to find is the gap between these 2 vectors. So for results, it's kind of surprising. The gap, like for all of the different skills, was only about 5%. And this is just showing like how I got that gap, and showing the similarity is about 94%, and also showing the actual angle measurement. So this is what the vector actually look like, well, in a pretty format. So on this side is the skill requirements, and on that side is the workforce KSAs. And these are the 17 different skill requirements that were projections that the workforce will need. And then And these are again for SOC code 15. These are the skill requirements that the BLS was projecting they would need. And then over here is ONET saying this is what people are self-reporting. These are the skills that they have. And so then you see the values right here, and that's where I measured the gap between these two vectors. And right here, although I said that the gap is only 5%, something that was notable to this presentation is that out of all of the different skills, which we noticed that a lot of them, some of them are soft skills, some of them are hard skills, and I think both of what my participants noted they honestly could be hard or soft, because you said defend and then you said preserve. So that could be that could be innovation, that could be creative, that could be reading, writing, problem solving, decision making. Basically, there's a very broad categories, but the most technical categories, computer and information technology, as well as mathematics, as you can see, have the largest gaps. And so that was something that was concerning, because why are the most technical skills? Why do the most technical skills make up the largest gap? And this chart also just shows the same thing in a different form. So my key takeaways is that there's a misalignment between employers, education, and training. And when talking this over, really just wondering, really what I came to terms with is that cyber threats are always evolving, and our curriculum doesn't always keep up with that. And that's kind of goes back to ONCD trying to get rid of degree requirements, because sometimes those degree requirements don't even get the job done. And so there's a misalignment between timing, employers, education, hiring, and then the most high demand skills, which are technical skills, make up the biggest gap. And so this means that we need more targeted training for technical improvement and innovation, and more consistent on-the-job training to meet the constant threat and evolving threats. So for future work, something we wanted to do, because originally we were using a LinkedIn jobs posting data set, and it had way more specific skills than the broad ones that you saw. But we weren't able to find a match in order to do the cosine similarity. But with that, we were able to put it into entry level, intermediate, and advanced positions. So looking at the gap for that, because sometimes the gap is not about skill, but it's about, does this skill meet this level of position? So a lot of people will have like skills for entry level positions, but those 500,000 unfilled positions are more intermediate. So that's something we could do in the future. And then looking for a method of objective quantifying of work skills, because like I use survey data of like, these are people saying these are the skills that they have, but do they really have these skills? And then standardizing that definition of cyber skills. Like as we see in the crowd, we all have different ideas. And as I was doing research, I found a lot of different definitions of cyber skills. And then finally, measuring the rate of advanced technology outpacing education, and how can we like change our curriculum to keep up with cyber. So yeah, that's the end.
Cool, thank you so much. So we do have a minute for a question or two, if there's any from the audience.
Oh,
go for it.
I'm wondering how you decompose. You said you pulled job post requirements from LinkedIn.
mm-hmm.
How did you choose to decompose the skills into bins?
Oh yeah, using keywords for entry level. So basically I made one like entry level, intermediate, and advanced, and then in Python, and then use that to filter the larger data set of job postings. So yeah, just keywords.
Cool, thank you so much.
Thank you.